you ready to go on a journey? Because we're going to do a bit of a journey today, and we're going to have a little math lesson. You guys ready for that? I mean, I know it's just after lunch and all, and you're like super excited to get into like hardcore math, right? I can't hear you. Okay, here we go. We're going to learn some mathematics today. All right, so who knows music theory here? A few hands, okay. So if we were to start and make a scale of music, because everything in this universe is actually a musical scale. So start with that premise. And I'm not just talking about what we enjoy when we listen to music. I'm actually talking about what we look at when we see light. All of it is a scale. All of it conforms to octave representations. So we're going to go on a little journey and learn the math of musical scales. Okay? You excited? Yes. Okay, all right. So the first thing you do with a musical scale is to start off with a unison note. It could be any note, but let's start off with 432 hertz. Is that fair? Okay, so that's an A note, right? 432 hertz, A note. Now, in order to find the middle of the scale, all we have to do is multiply this number by the square root of 2. So if we multiply that by the square root of 2, who knows what the square root of 2 is? 1.4142, okay? So a lot of people have seen Terrence Howard recently, okay? In this context, it's not 1, okay? It's 1.4142, and it's the middle of a scale. If the square root of 2 were really only 1, then we would have no light differentiation, we would have no musical expression, we would have no sound or light, literally. It's this differentiation and separation. I understand where Terrence is going with it, and I think it has very significant potential ramifications. But for the context of what we're looking at for musical scales, the square root of 2 is 1.4142, and it's an infinite number. Okay? So if we look at an octave, when we hear the word octave, what do we think of? What number? 8. So if we were to take the square root of 8, what is that number? Does anyone know? The square root of 8 is 2.828. Now, if I take that in half, what is half of 2.828? 1.4142. Okay, so if you look at it, what you're really doing is finding the mean value, the center point of an octave. That's the square root of 8, then divided by 2. You understand? So that gives you the middle of the scale, and in music, it gives you something called a diminished fifth. And this is a very not so nice sounding interval in music. So when you listen to Darth Vader coming into the room, it's dun, 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 dun. Doesn't sound so great, right? Because this number represents duality. Duality. So think about that for a minute. When we think of the word duality, what do we immediately think of? We think of the number 2. But what's the essence of duality? The infinite aspect of the number 2, which is really just a compression for an infinite number, that is 1.4142. So imagine you start with a circle and you cut that circle right down the middle. The way you cut it is with the square root of 2. It literally forms duality. Think of this whole circle as an octave of expression. So then from there, we have the diminished fifth, but then we also can take this to give us the augmented fourth. So the augmented fourth is the same value as the square root of 2. It's the same, okay? So now from there, we can also figure out if we use exact integer relationships, we can actually form all of the rest of a scale in what's called Pythagorean just tuning. Okay? So then we could create a perfect fourth, which gives us a 4/3 relationship. 4/3. And the perfect fifth would be the inverse of that. And the way you find it is you simply take the denominator, the 3, you double it, and then you make it the numerator, and then make the 4 the denominator. So if we're going to do that, the perfect fifth is going to be 6/4. See what I just did there? Now if I reduce that down, what does that reduce down to? They're both divisible, right, by 2. So you've got 3, 6 divided by 2 equals 3/2. So for the music theorists out there, so far so good? So we've got the diminished fifth, which cuts the octave in half, right at its logarithmic center. You've got the augmented fourth, which is just its inverse, but its inverse is still equal to the square root of 2. Right, because the way you take that inverse, this would be square root of 2/1, and then you double it just like I did here, so it becomes 2 over the square root of 2, and that's still the square root of 2. So that's why it's the center of the scale. The perfect fourth and the perfect fifth become inverse relationships of each other. So you've got 4/3 and 3/2. So then if we go to the major third, and its inverse will be the minor 6. Now you might notice something here. Now in music theory, one thing you'll always notice is that the pairings of these interval relationships will always sum to a number 9. So we've got augmented fourth, diminished fifth, 4 plus 5 equals 9. The perfect fourth and the perfect fifth, 4 plus 5 equals 9. The major third would pair with the minor sixth. 3 plus 6 equals 9. You see the pattern? Now once we get past the center point here, you have this polarity shift that happens. So imagine that major is like a positive polarity and minor would be like a negative polarity. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. We say that masculine can be positive and feminine can be negative, but actually it could be the opposite direction as well. It's just your point of reference that you're perceiving it from. So we've got the major third and the minor sixth. And what's the major third value? The major third value ends up being, anyone know? Comes out to be 6/5. Right? And then the minor sixth is going to be its inverse, so it's going to be 10, double that 5, over the 6. Follow me? Okay, so now you're learning music theory. So if we go up beyond this, then the next is going to be the minor third and the major sixth. Do you guys follow the pattern now? So the minor third and the major sixth has also another interval relationship. Does anyone know what it is? Nobody know? The minor third, major, oh no, I'm sorry, you know what, I did something wrong. That's 6/5. This is supposed to be 5/4. And that's 8/5. Sorry about that. And now this is 6/5 and 10/6. Okay, 5/4 versus 8/5. You just double the 4 to become 8 and then make it the denominator, right? The 5 becomes a denominator. The minor third is 6/5 and 10/6. Okay, then the next would be the major second, right? And the minor seventh. And then you could imagine the one on top of that would be the minor second and the major seventh. And then the last one is going to be unison, and then down here, octave. Okay, so that just becomes 2/1 for the octave, and this is 1/1. Okay, so the major second and the minor seventh turns out to be 15 over 8, and that becomes 16. 16 over 8. Oh, sorry, goes 16 over 15. And then this one is 25 over 24, and then it becomes 48 over 25. Okay. Now, why am I teaching you this? What is the point of this scale? And what does it have to do with Egypt? Anyone have an idea?